Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
Sleep!
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
Sleep!
Lightning bolt!
There is no Dungeons & Dragons class as iconic throughout the genre of fantasy than the wizard. Even the mere shadow of a wizard is easy to parse from a crowd. That pointed, oversized hat, the long beard, the flowing robes, and that ancient staff have been etched into our hearts and minds. It is a class of pure utility and wonder, one that can transmute objects, distort reality, or fry an opponent with a well-timed fireball. Some say knowledge is power, and no other class embodies this idea more than the wizard. Welcome back to the next episode in the Class Color Series, a series where I apply the color pie to the classes of Dungeons & Dragons in order to help you build better characters. If you're a fan of the color pie, I bet you already have some ideas in your head for this class, but don't get ahead of yourself. Like the wizard, there is always room to be surprised. Now, before we do dive in, I just want to take a moment to thank my Patreons for their support. And a special thank you to my latest patron, Redclaw. If you want to help support the channel directly, then there'll be a link for that and everything else in the description. The wizard is in many ways the equivalent to a fighter within the realm of magic wielders. An odd comparison, I know, but hear me out. Just as the fighter can pick up any weapon and be good at it, the wizard has access to a massive catalog of spells. In many ways, it's only really limited by its imagination. A wizard can peer into the unknown, conjure objects out of thin air, enchant people's minds, craft explosive damaging spells, call upon the elements, beguile with illusions, raise the undead, warp matter into new forms, and so much more. The wizard is less defined by the class itself and more by the school it chooses to focus on. So, as you can imagine, it's a bit of a task to choose just 4 sets of colors and combinations that will encapsulate everything that makes a wizard what it is. Because of this, we will be speaking in broader terms, and will instead find overlap between the schools. To say that the wizard is only defined by its schools is a bit disingenuous though, and there are aspects that are unique to the class, which set it apart from other magic wielders. So let's talk about that before we start picking any of the colors. The wizard is a class defined by its hunger for knowledge, and this is reflected in its vast array of spells documented in its spellbook. To become a wizard, it takes a special thirst for discovery and learning. If this type of character couldn't conjure magic, they would still be studying lost knowledge. Perhaps they would be a scholar, an archaeologist, or an astronomer. They're curious by nature, and that curiosity never ends. They're the type of class that is willing to iterate on what they have learned, and from there, gain more understanding and knowledge. A wizard must be willing to spend the time it takes to master their craft, and sometimes won't reach their potential until old age. And I believe this has a fundamental effect on the wizard. What I mean is that this shows a level of dedication to perfection that is hard to find anywhere else. Your character might still be young and in its infancy of power when you start playing them, but its dedication is still unmistakable, and its thirst for hidden knowledge unquenchable. Okay, I'm sure you're starting to get restless. I know you've probably got a couple ideas in your head already for the core color, so let's not waste any more time. As always, we will start with the class colors chosen by Wizards of the Coast, and then we will decide if their idea of the core color hits the mark. Okay, before I reveal any cards, I want you to take a moment to pick what one color you would assign to the wizard. Think about it. Do you have it? Alright, let's reveal the card to see what Wizards of the Coast has decided. And what we have here is mono blue. I'm pretty confident that most of you chose mono blue, and honestly, I'm inclined to agree. The wizard embodies everything about blue that makes it what it is, and so yes, I will be picking this as the core to the wizard class. The distinction I want to make though is that blue is the base for the wizard, or the vanilla version. It doesn't speak to the complexity of the class, but is instead at the heart of what makes it what it is. This is a color that you'll see pop up time and time again within different versions, and really it's a building block, rather than a color I would rest on as the only definition for the class. Like I said, the school you choose and your character's motivations play a huge part in the colors you will be picking when you build your wizard. With that said, it is important to explain what makes the wizard blue, because without a strong base of understanding, it can be hard to add complexity on top of it. Blue is the color that represents the constant desire for improvement, and of the person who is always marching forward and building upon what has come before it. This does not always equate to knowledge, but often does. The blue character usually finds a craft to focus on, one that it can output its effective hunger for perfection upon. The reason this usually floods into knowledge, and especially in the case of the wizard, is that learning is never ending. The wizard can learn a new spell, find an application for it, perfect its use, and in time learn more potent spells, starting out casting simple rudimentary spells and eventually gaining the ability to warp time and space. The ceiling for what can be achieved by a wizard is almost the highest for this class than any other. What I mean is that a simple bookworm can eventually, through determination, become close to a god. It takes a certain kind of person to reach for such heights, but that is the determination and drive that blue provides, especially in the context of a wizard. As we will see in this video, this concept will be pulled in different directions, but blue will almost always be present. As I always say, it's up to your character's motivations though, so don't feel forced to use this color. Just be sure to place a different strong motivation in its place. Alright, let's move on to our first combination. For this, I want to add both black and white to the mix to see what we get. The white, blue, black wizard, or Esper wizard as it's called in Magic, is the type of character who has manipulation and control at the heart of its magic and motivations. It leans towards spells that tap into people's minds, into reality, or utilizes illusions. There is always a deeper secret behind the veil of existence. If you chose these colors, the result would be a character who wishes to enforce its will on reality, or desires to hold sway over the minds of the masses. Let's break it down a bit further to see what each color brings to this mentality to better understand its complexities. In the case of white within the wizard, this represents a focus on the people around them, a wider scope of thinking that wishes to change the minds of many, or of their very perception of reality. They have a grand design to their work and are not satisfied in simply creating magic for just themselves. Perhaps they will use it in politics, the wider perfection of society, or simply for the joy of manipulation. Blue, as we have covered, is the aspect of the wizard that has the drive to pursue such large and momentous tasks. It's the side of the wizard that has a bigger plan. Often blue and white, when combined, become obsessed with the perfection, protection, or manipulation of society. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves though. Why would it want to change reality, manipulate others, or enchant weaker minds? Well, that comes from its black side. This wizard may be crafty and cunning, but it always finds a way for it to benefit itself. To enchant others or to manipulate minds or reality takes a level of selfish thought. It is enforcing your will onto others and onto their perceived truths. This can't be understated enough. Most of us might feel uncomfortable doing so, as we feel we have no right over such things. But with a focus on black, this fear is shed, and a confidence and enjoyment from doing so replaces it. Even with noble intentions, the mere act of enforcing your will on other people or reality will always be a selfish one. Now, I do really enjoy this type of wizard, but be careful not to trust them. They always have a bigger plan in mind than your simple adventure. Alright, let's move on to a different version of the wizard, one that takes change in a different direction. For that, I want to take both white and black out of the equation and add green. The result of this change is now a wizard who extends its curiosity to nature itself and gains some pleasure from the conjuring of objects and creatures, or of the transmutation of one entity into another. This wizard might enjoy the light-hearted side of magic, and its motivations are a product of simple curiosity. A character who likes to see what can happen with a bit of experimentation on what nature already provides, while still respecting certain forms. If we look at the colors present, we see why. Blue, as always, is the curiosity, the mindset that sees potential in everything. Blue often will be restless when it knows that there is more that can be done, and nature as it is has nothing but room for growth and change. It simply is adding to that evolution. This isn't to say that the wizard does not enjoy what already is present. It will master spells that tap into what nature already provides, bringing creatures into existence, transforming one thing into another, and traveling to every plane of reality. Now, this is all possible with a pairing like green, a color that balances the wizard and prevents it from taking its magic too far, or allowing its arrogance to get a hold of itself. It is the color of perspective, meaning that this character doesn't want to necessarily bend nature to its will in order to gain power, but instead wishes to take what is static and turn it into something dynamic. This wizard is also wise and patient, willing to take things slow, never rushing into bad decisions. Sometimes this means that this wizard lives a solitary life, one where it studies and watches, learning anything it can from the natural world and applying what it has learned onto its magic. Now, if this type of wizard isn't for you, then perhaps we can take things in the opposite direction with the next wizard on our list. For this wizard, we will drop green and blue, then add in a color of action in red and of personal motivation in black. Alright, now this is where things get a little bit different. The black-red wizard's motivations are far from what we established in our previous examples. They are rash, arrogant, and explosive, utilizing their magic in ways that expresses their natural talent. While many wizards spend their long lives studying and honing their craft, the concept behind this wizard is of one who came upon its power rather young, and this has a fundamental effect on how they view both magic and themselves. Now, it's not the same as a sorcerer who is often born with their power, but rather a wizard who has a natural talent that is unmistakable, in that every spell they attempt to learn comes easy to them. It's as if they have a pure understanding of magic deep down, instead of a need to work hard to gain any amount of that power. This has a fundamental effect on the wizard and creates a character that is arrogant and direct, one who doesn't find any aspect of magic off limits. This is reflected in the magic they use, opting out of spells that manipulate or modify, and in favor of spells that might seem off limits to some, like that of necromancy, as black has no qualms with using forbidden spells, and red only pushes that further. On the other side of it, perhaps this character makes use of magic that is direct, and focuses on dealing a lot of damage with no thought as to what spell is best for what situation, as a simple fireball often solves a lot of problems in an instant. Many wizards can often fall into some level of arrogance as they gain power. I mean, if you could bend reality to your will, wouldn't you be? The key difference is that the typical wizard has a respect for magic that it has gained from a long life of study, and someone who does not respect their magic and only sees it as a tool for their ambitions is someone who can be rather dangerous, and that is often the case with the black-red wizard. Now, whether that benefits your party or not really depends on if you can keep them on your good side. This character might be a bit of a jerk, but their knack for understanding magic cannot be denied. As you can see from our examples here today, blue very much is a major part of the wizard, and yet I would rarely suggest you go with mono blue. There are times when I would recommend using only the core color or colors, but in the case of blue and the wizard, it truly is a core, and your character is only truly built when you start to add colors. So let's do just that. I want to make my way through the color pie and see what each color brings in order to help you decide which colors you would like to pull from in order to create the best wizard to fit your character's motivations. Let's start with white. White, in the case of the wizard, is one who focuses on other people, or in the upholding or manipulation of civilization through magic. This can take a few forms depending on the other colors present. Just be sure to understand that when you add white, your character usually will uphold some larger ideal, whether that is a superiority that allows for the manipulation of the masses, or results in an idealist that helps shape civilization in order to bring it forward into a new dawn. All of that is up to you. Then we have blue, which we talked about in length already, but essentially blue is the color of a visionary, of efficient iteration. It's at the heart of the wizard because it takes a real desire to learn, to study, and to observe to become a wizard. In many ways, it's the most scholarly of all the classes in Dungeons & Dragons. Next, we have black, another color I honestly could see come up time and time again as the wizard grows in power. This might be the kind of color that shows itself as your wizard gains levels, in that the more power it wields, the more it would have to fight off the urge to feel superior to others. Black is a great color to have within oneself, but if it's ever shown proof of its superiority over others, it can be hard for black not to become arrogant and self-absorbed. Next, we have red, a color that would lean more into a rash and fun-loving wizard. My belief is that this color would be more present in younger wizards, one who see their fireballs shoot forth and are thrilled by the result, a character that almost does magic for the joy of simply rolling damage dice, rather than the methodical and critical thinking of other wizards. Finally, we have green, a color that I would see as the opposite end of the spectrum, one who has lived many lifetimes, and they have seen many things and peered deeper than most could imagine. Because of this, they might have a wider perspective and see the world from a different view than others could even hope to grasp. To say that the wizard is easy to pin down would be a lie. The wizard in many ways is shaped by a myriad of motivations, and thus their coloration can be diverse. Things like age, school of magic, upbringing, motivations, and many other components can really influence your color choices. This is one of those classes where I would suggest you revisit their colors from time to time, as they might change with power and more understanding. Perhaps they are red-blue in their youth, then they shift to black-red-blue as they gain power, finally settling into white-blue-green, once they become the closest thing a mortal can get to a god and have higher perspective. Like always though, don't be afraid to experiment and come up with your own ideas. Just be sure to take into consideration the effect that such powerful magics can have on a character, and in doing so, I'm sure you'll be able to craft more interesting and robust characters. Well, thank you so much for checking out my latest video. I know it took a little bit for this one to come out. I had to work my way through a writer's block, but I hope you did enjoy it. If this is your first time here and you really like this video, then be sure to check out more videos on other class colors that I've covered. And now it's time for me to extend a question to you. I would love to hear a good example of a wizard in other media, a wizard you've built personally, or one that you plan on building, and what colors you would choose for them and why. That's always the best part about this for me, is actually hearing your stories, so be sure to share what your characters are like and what colors you chose for them in the comments. As always, friends, I'll catch you in the multiverse. Bye.